What if the world you live in isn't real, not in the way you think it is? What if your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs weren't just private, silent experiences, but the actual builders of the world around you? Ancient masters knew something we've forgotten. They didn't just live in reality. They created it, not metaphorically. Literally, this is not philosophy as entertainment. This is philosophy as technology, the technology of consciousness. A system practiced for thousands of years by mystics, sages, alchemists, and initiates that allowed them to bend the laws of fate and build the lives they envisioned. They weren't waiting for the world to change. They changed themselves, and the world responded. Let me take you back to ancient Egypt, to a world of temples, symbols, and secret teachings hidden behind stone walls. There, the initiates of the Hermetic tradition were taught a single, stunning truth: as within, so without. As above, so below. That one phrase became the cornerstone of a spiritual science. It meant that the inner world of thoughts and emotions was a mirror of the outer world. But more than that, it meant the inner world was the cause, and the outer world was the effect. So if you wanted to change your external reality, you had to work from the inside out. This wasn't just taught, it was tested. The student was trained in stillness, in mental clarity, in visualization, in emotional mastery. These weren't random exercises. They were tools for influencing the very fabric of reality, and it worked. Those who passed through these initiations didn't just become wise, they became powerful. Not because they dominated others, but because they had dominion over themselves. Their thoughts were sharp as blades. Their emotions flowed like controlled fire. They stopped reacting and started creating. Now, let's cross the ocean to the ancient East. In India, yogis practiced a similar form of inner engineering, but their language was different. They spoke of Maya, the illusion of the world, and taught that the mind was the projector of that illusion. To them, your life was like a film, and your mind, the lens. If the lens is scratched, the world looks distorted. If it's clean and focused, the world becomes beautiful, clear, and full of meaning. But here's the secret the yogis understood. You are not the mind, you are the one observing it. And when you realize that, when you step behind the thoughts and watch them like clouds in the sky, you begin to gain power over them. You stop being a victim of your emotions. You stop being trapped by old stories, and you begin writing new ones. The yogis went further. Through breathwork, mantra, and deep meditation, they altered their state of consciousness to align with what they desired. They didn't beg the universe for change. They became the vibration of the change itself. Want peace. Be peace. Want abundance. Embody it. Want love. Radiate it before you even receive it. This wasn't fantasy. It was practice. And over time, reality bent to meet the energy they carried. Now shift to ancient China. The Taoists had no interest in controlling reality. They wanted to flow with it. They believed that when you live in harmony with the Tao, the eternal way, life begins to unfold effortlessly. Their secret, Wu Wei, it means effortless action. But don't mistake it for laziness. It's the deep inner skill of not forcing, of acting when the time is right, of flowing like water, adapting like wind. And that's the paradox. By surrendering control, they gained it. Because when you no longer resist life, when you stop trying to force things, you begin to move in harmony with the rhythms of the universe. And when you're in that rhythm, reality responds to you like music to a master dancer. You see the pattern. Whether it was the Hermetics of Egypt, the Yogis of India, or the Taoists of China, they all understood something we're only beginning to rediscover. Reality is not fixed, it's fluid. It responds not just to what you do, but to what you are. The world outside you is shaped by the world inside you. Modern science is just catching up. Quantum physics now tells us that the observer affects the observed. That reality at the subatomic level is influenced by consciousness. But these ancient masters didn't need particle accelerators to know this. They lived it. Every thought was a signal, every emotion a frequency, and every belief a blueprint. That's why they guarded their minds like sacred temples. They didn't let just any thought in. They knew that to think a thought repeatedly was to invite it into manifestation. So they became ruthless about what they allowed themselves to focus on. And here's where it gets practical. If your thoughts are builders, what are you building with them every day? If your emotions are magnets, what are you attracting? If your beliefs are scripts, what kind of story are you unconsciously writing? The first step to creating your reality is to become aware of what you've already created by default. Look at your life, not with blame, with curiosity. Where do you feel stuck? Where do things keep repeating? What situations drain your energy? What patterns keep coming back? These are not random, they are feedback. Reality is showing you what you're carrying inside. Your fears, your doubts, your unexamined assumptions, but also your power, your clarity, your unspoken desires. You are not here to react to the world. You are here to create it, but you can't do that until you see yourself clearly. The ancient masters began with self-observation. Before they built anything, they studied the architect, themselves. They watched their thoughts like a hawk. They noticed what triggered them emotionally. They paid attention to the words they spoke. Why? Because they understood that your inner dialogue is your destiny. Say something enough times, even silently, and it becomes true. So what are you affirming in secret? What are you repeating to yourself in the privacy of your mind? I'm not good enough. I never get what I want. Nothing ever changes. These aren't just thoughts, they're instructions. And the universe listens, but it doesn't judge. It simply reflects. When the Hermetic masters said the all is mind, they meant it. The universe is a mental construct, and your personal experience of it, a reflection of your dominant mental state. That means you have more power than you've been told. You are not a servant of fate. You are a creator in training, and the training begins not with external effort, but with internal awareness. That's how it started for them, and that's how it can start for you. Imagine this. Every morning before the sun rose, ancient initiates would sit in silence, eyes closed, and enter the stillness within. Not because it was mystical, because it was necessary. They understood that clarity came before creation. That if your mind is chaotic, your life will mirror that chaos. But if your mind is ordered, calm, intentional, life bends to meet that order. This is why the greatest masters were not always the loudest, richest, or most visible. They were the most internally aligned. They were masters of vibration. Everything in the universe vibrates. Your thoughts vibrate. Your emotions vibrate. And when you learn to tune your inner vibration, reality begins to match that frequency. This isn't spiritual poetry. It's energetic physics, like tuning a radio. You don't get the station you want by complaining about the static. You turn the dial inside. The question is, what are you tuned to? Fear, doubt, scarcity, or love? Vision, power, ancient mystics trained themselves to feel the future before it arrived, to walk, breathe, and speak as though what they wanted was already true. And here's the twist. It wasn't delusion. It was alignment. Because when your inner world becomes emotionally coherent with your vision, you send out a signal that influences people, events, and circumstances. Not by force, but by resonance. This is what the alchemists of the Middle Ages meant when they spoke of transmutation, not turning lead into gold, but turning fear into wisdom, pain into purpose, and thought into form. And this inner alchemy always began with one act: responsibility. The masters never blamed, not even in secret. They didn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They asked, "What in me called this forth, and what can I learn from it?" They treated every challenge as a mirror, every delay as a teacher, every enemy as a reflection of a disowned part of the self. Why? Because that gave them power. You can't change what you don't claim. The moment you take full ownership of your inner state, reality becomes clay in your hands. Not instantly, but inevitably. Let's go deeper. Visualization wasn't just a tool for these ancient beings, it was sacred practice. They didn't visualize just to get things. They visualized to become things. They saw themselves already living the life they desired. Not from the outside as spectators, but from the inside as participants. They walked through the rooms of their future homes, felt the texture of the clothes they would wear, heard the sounds of joy, wealth, harmony, and let those sounds become normal. Because what you can emotionally normalize, you magnetize. The brain doesn't distinguish between imagination and experience. So the more vividly you feel the desired reality, the more your subconscious rewires to support it. New thoughts arise, new choices emerge, new actions become obvious. And soon, reality adjusts, not as magic, but as mechanics. But the key is repetition. No master visualized once and gave up. They returned to the image daily, morning and night, not out of desperation, but devotion. And over time, what they once saw in the mind began to materialize before the eyes. So ask yourself, do you have a daily practice of inner alignment? Or are you letting the outer world shape your state? Are you starting your day with noise, comparison, distraction, or with stillness, vision, and clarity? You see, the ancients didn't just visit their ideal reality in meditation. They lived as though it were already unfolding. That's the great secret. Act from the end, speak not from the pain of lack, but from the joy of fulfillment. Move not from anxiety, but from confidence in your path. Because energy doesn't lie, and the universe responds to your being, not your wishing. And here's where modern seekers often get stuck. They think they need to fix themselves first, heal every wound, solve every problem. Then, and only then, can they begin to create. But the masters knew better. Creation is not the result of healing. Healing is the result of creation. When you begin walking toward your vision, you trigger every limitation inside you. Every fear, every doubt, every story that says, you can't. And that's perfect. Because only by facing those patterns can you transcend them. The path reveals the blockages, and the blockages reveal the next evolution of your power. The masters didn't avoid resistance. They welcomed it, because they knew resistance is the signal that transformation is near. So what are you resisting? What vision scares you just enough that you keep postponing it? That's the one you're meant to pursue. And as you walk that path, choosing the thought, holding the vision, shifting the frequency, you begin to notice something strange. The world begins to mirror back new signs. People show up who weren't there before. Opportunities open where there was once silence. Coincidences multiply. You think of someone and they call. You imagine a solution and the idea appears. You align and the world moves. This is not superstition. This is alignment in action. But it only happens when you decide fully to live from the inside out. The ancients lived this truth so deeply that they seemed to possess supernatural powers. But they weren't supernatural. They were just superconscious. They mastered the laws of reality, laws that still govern our world today, the law of cause and effect, the law of vibration, the law of mentalism. And they didn't just learn these laws intellectually. They became them. They were the cause. They were the vibration. They were the mind that shaped the world. And now, it's your turn. You don't need to retreat into a cave or spend 40 years in a temple. You just need to start with what they all started with: awareness. Begin observing your thoughts, not to judge them, but to understand their pattern. Begin noticing your emotions, not to suppress them, but to learn their rhythm. Begin speaking as if the reality you want is already building itself around you, because it is. And the more you do this, the more your life begins to feel different, not instantly perfect, but deeply aligned. You'll feel more calm, even in chaos, more certain, even in the unknown, and more powerful, not over others, but over yourself. And that, in the end, is the goal, not to escape reality, but to realize that you were shaping it all along. So now the question turns to you. What reality are you ready to create? What thoughts will you choose? What emotions will you carry? And who will you become now that you remember who you truly are? Let me know in the comments below. What's one belief, one habit, or one vision you're ready to align with starting today? Because once you decide, everything can change.